Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to the Medium's Table. I'm your host, Michelle Gardner. This podcast is your personal invitation to join me at the intersection of the everyday and the extraordinary. Together, we'll explore the magic of mediumship, share spiritual stories, and connect with fellow mediums on this incredible journey. So grab a seat, pour yourself a cuppa, and come join us at the Medium's Table, where spirits gather and stories unfold. Disclaimer, just a heads up to all our lovely followers. Our social media is a space where we share personal stories, including those of various mediums. Let's keep the vibe positive and respect each other's beliefs. Every journey is unique, and here we celebrate the diversity of experiences. I'd like to welcome to the show Laura Lynn. Welcome to the show, Laura.
Hi, Michelle. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so pleased to have you here because I know that I don't know your story to start with. That's the biggest one. And, for anyone that's listening out there, they might go, oh, you've probably known each other for years. Yeah, we have. That's true. But when we get together, it's usually purely practice. And we don't share stories to each other about our life, things that have happened to us. And also, we live in completely different countries. You're in America and I'm in Australia. So it's not like we've been catching up for coffee and having a chat. So today, you're going to be sharing something very special with us. But firstly, I would love for you to tell the audience what it is that you do.
Okay. So I am a certified psychic medium. I specialize in evidential mediumship, and I'm a Reiki master and a healer and spirit artist. I belong to an online spirit art group that I submit my portraits to and include evidence of the spirit that came through, and then they can verify, and usually verifies with someone within a day. And also, I am working to become a spiritual emergency coach.
Oh, what does that entail?
A spiritual emergency coach is someone who, it would pick up into my past and what I did in the past, but it connects with the spiritual aspect of psychiatric nursing in regards to psychiatric hospitals and the fact that they have spiritual psychiatric hospitals in Brazil. And, our goal is to spread it into other countries. United States is opening up towards psychiatric mental illness, but there's a lot more that needs to be known with spiritual aspects of this, syndrome, symptoms that the younger people have when they go into an emergency.
Wow, that sounds so fascinating. And I'm going to say so needed in the world.
Yes.
Incredible. Wow. That's such a blessing to be able to have that gift to be working with people like that, Laura. Incredible. Yeah. Well, and that being said, on that note, because you've got quite a little list there, I want to say quite a little list, quite a big list of modalities that you do. So without further ado, I would love for you to tell us how it is that you got to where you are today. How did you become a medium and an artist among those many, many different things that you do? How did that transpire?
Okay, well, it's a really long story, but most of it began, I would say, it began when I was in 5th grade, and our family moved to an area in outside of Chicago in the suburbs. It was a very nice little town, and I remember going into my fifth grade classroom, and before the teacher would come in to teach all the students in the we would get together and we'd put two tables and we'd put them together and each person would take turns, but we would lay on the table. And then all the students, all our friends would go around and put two fingers under our bodies and we would practice lifting the person up. Now we didn't have that many people, but I remember when it was my turn to go on the table and they were going to lift me up. I remember feeling like I was weightless. Like, how can they actually lift me up with these two fingers? And it was more, when I think about it right now, it reminds me of table tipping. It reminds me of physical mediumship. That's what it reminds me of. I was fascinated with it. I knew and I felt something different rising up. I constantly have dreams where I'm rising up to the ceiling. Of course, I feel a connection. I'm not rising up there. I always feel a cord attached to me when I rise up. But in my dreams, this happens all the time. And then I remember when I was about 14 years old or soon afterwards, I was one day riding my bike on the street and I'm thinking, my friends are talking about, some of my friends are talking about wanting to kill themselves. And I got the sense, I think I might want to kill myself. And then I thought to myself, why would I even think about something like that? Because at that moment, I knew there was so much more to life than what is physically around us. And this was at 14 years old. I realized there was much more to life. And then from that time, it just progressed. The house that we lived in, um, I would hear people talking around the corner of the house and into the front room. And I walked up the back stairs and I'm walking into the house. I'm going around the corner and I'm hearing a party in the front room and there's absolutely no one in the house. And when I realized there was no one in the house, I turned the corner. When I realized there was no one in the house, the voices stopped, completely stopped. Sometimes the phone would go off and I'd go to answer it and there'd be no one on the phone. It would just go dead. But I heard someone call my name to go answer the phone. And this is when we only had one phone in the house. We didn't have cell phones. We only had the phone on the wall. So there was a connection back then, and I knew that there was something going on more than what we could see in our lives. But I just kept on with my life. I kept grounding, being myself and getting on with life and not thinking too much of what else was out there, even though I knew something was out there. Then at 16 years old, I went on vacation with my mom and my dad and my brother. My brother is 4 years younger than me. I have three brothers. Two are older and the one's younger. So it was just myself and my younger brother and my parents. We went out to go see an aunt who lived in Connecticut. And she had an older home. And this was the first time that I saw a ghost at the end of my bed. A little boy. And it was eye-opening. because I had not seen anyone before that time. That was probably about 16. Yeah, it was 16 years old. Um, so that's a story for another time when I can explain that. And then on the same vacation, we were coming home to see my other aunt, my mom's sister, on the way home in Ohio at that time. I was leaving the house in the backyard to run down to get in the car where my family was. And as clear as could be, I heard off in the distance someone saying, Laura, yelling my name. But I knew by the tone of the voice, it wasn't anyone here in this world. It was someone off in a different realm that was saying my name. And I've never forgotten it. We got home from that vacation, and my life at that time, I was going to go into the Air Force Academy in Colorado because I wanted to be a pilot. That was my goal after high school, to be a pilot. I had a nomination from our senator to go there. It was between myself and someone else in my school. It turned out that he's the one who got picked to go to be the pilot. And I, at the end of the school year, I had gotten sick from going to a outing with my friends. We went to the lake to go swim the dunes. And when I got back from the dunes, I had a virus. That's what they called it. But of course, that's another story for another time because that would be more of my near-death experience of my true awakening. Because even though I was awake before that time, when that happened, I was near death at that evening. They told my parents I wouldn't live through the night. As it turned out, through so much that I can still remember, I survived. They said it was a miracle. My mom's sister and other sister were very religious. They had prayer circles going, and I believe in prayer. And I believe that their having prayer circles just helped me to get through this time. And from being in the hospital and being in a semi-coma and having losing my speech, losing all abilities to walk, everything, just starting from over. I went into a rehabilitation center for over a year, and came out of that. And when I got home, I had to carry a necklace around my neck because my room was on the second floor, and I had to walk downstairs. Well, my mom didn't want me to walk down by myself, so she asked me to use the whistle on this chain to whistle when I needed to get downstairs. Of course, we didn't have cell phones back then. I don't even know if I would know how to use a cell phone. I could work my fingers well enough to do that. One morning, there was an alcove in my room, and I wake up, I'm looking out towards the alcove, and I see my aunt peeking her head around the corner, and she's wearing these pajamas, and she's combing her hair with the comb, just looking at me. And I was like, why is she here? There's no reason for her to be here. Well, she was gone soon afterwards. So I called my mom, I talked to her, and I said, Mom, I just saw Aunt Shirley. And that was my dad's sister. And she said that
It's okay, Laura. Take your time. It's okay.
she said that Aunt Shirley died while I was in the rehab.
Oh,
And so we thought from that point that my Aunt Shirley came to check up to see if I was okay, see if everything was okay.
yeah.
And then, so of course I knew something happened, but I had to get on with my life. I knew there was much more in life, but life goes on.
Mm.
Um,
Can I
I wanted,
interrupt? Can I interrupt you, Laura? How old were
you
you
sure
when this?
can.
How old were you when that happened?
18,
18.
18.
Okay, so still quite young.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, of course, when I was home, I went into like a depressed state because when I walked like I was very unstable. I shook really bad. My hands shook. I couldn't even hold a can of a cup of coffee. I couldn't hold anything without a lid without it shaking all over because it affected my nerves. It wasn't anxiety as much as it was my nerves were damaged to the point that I just wasn't able to really get my speech back that much. I had to go through speech therapy to enunciate my words. Um, so I'm very self-conscious about the way I speak. I've gotten better, but I still know in my heart that is not the way I spoke before this all happened. I used to be able to speak really fast and fluently. Um, so I think that's why I just even speaking in front of people right now is very hard for me to do. Um, so my mom, being the mom she was like, well, we're not going to feel sorry for ourselves. She stood by me this whole time, my dad also. Uh, and my poor brother, who was 4 years younger, in the house. My other two brothers were gone at this time. My younger brother, my mom had to take with him with every time we went to see me. So he lost out on over a year of his life while they were taking care of me. Um, so I went on and she said, well, I think what we're going to have to do is you're going to have to volunteer at the hospital so that you can start taking care of other people that are worse off than you, that are maybe dying from cancer or in the hospital with some terminal illness so that you can realize how lucky you are that you're still alive. And that's what I did. So I went and volunteered at the hospital that I was actually in initially in the hospital. I delivered flowers. I delivered gifts that people would bring in, and we put them on a cart and we'd roll them up. I don't know if they have candy stripers in the United States still, but that's what I did. I was a candy striper. And when I was in the hospital, I realized, I think I need to become a nurse. And so I went into nursing, went into a community college close to the house, drove there. Driving was another story. That's another story. I had to retake the driver's exam so that they could prove that I could drive. Um, so while I was in school, because I was shaking so much and I was I'm not able to take notes fast enough. I had to tape record all my notes from the classes. I'm sure a lot of the instructors were very hesitant to have me become a nurse when I was in worse shape than some of these patients that were there. Um, so it was, I did pass. I did become a registered nurse. But when I went to take the exams, which were given on Scantrons back then in that year. That was 1983. You had to fill out the little circles in the Scantrons, and you had a certain amount of time. And you remember, I didn't have very good fine motor skills, so it was hard for me to fill out all those little circles, and in the time that I needed. So I became more anxious and more anxious and more anxious until my whole body was shaking so bad, not just my hand, that it took one of the preceptors, I think they're called the people that walk around the rooms to make sure you're not cheating or whatever. She put her hands on my shoulders just to steady me. And because I felt her hands on my shoulders, my body stopped shaking. And I was able to finish, but not enough to pass the exam. So I didn't become a nurse at that time. I'm thinking to myself, maybe it's just not something I'm supposed to be doing. That's how I felt about life, that things were going to happen as they happened. So I became a union carpenter. And the way I did that was my older brother was a union carpenter, and he said, Laura, why don't you join the union from our town and pass? I was good at math. I could, do the math questions that they had, and it was an exam, and they needed minorities, and I was a minority. I was a white female, but I was female. So that's what they needed on some of these government jobs. And if they could have someone that they actually knew, that they knew like would be okay, then they'd hire that person. So I went through 4 years of trade school. I learned all carpentry. I learned different skills, trim. I learned drywall. I learned, yeah, I'm just crazy things. But while I was being an apprentice is someone who works on the job but also goes to school until they finish their 4 years, and then they can become a journeyman. And I did that. I went through the entire time. I worked building bridges. I worked for drywall companies. I worked for, oh gosh, so many different, wherever they needed me. I I worked. One job was with my brother's company, and I went out to lunch with the guys. We were coming back, and it was in Chicago, right downtown. We were coming back, and I jaywalked, which was something you don't do in Chicago. The traffic, the first two lanes were stopped, and I crossed. And unfortunately, the third lane, there was a car coming. I think it was an SUV, if I can remember right. And his mirror hit my neck, and I went flying under his SUV. But he dead stopped right before he would have ran over my legs. He dead stopped. My legs would have been crushed. And he him and his wife were both, he was driving his wife. They got out of the car and they said, "Oh my gosh, oh my gosh." And my brother is coming down the road and he's like, "Laura, I can't believe you did that, Laura." And I said, "I'm okay. I'm fine. I'm okay." And I got up, and that's just me. That's me. I got up, I walked up, and I walked back into the job and I said, "It's okay." And the man says, "Do you need to go to the hospital? Do you need any assistance?" I said, "No, you missed my legs. Thank you. I appreciate the fact that you missed my legs." And I went back to work and I worked the rest of that day. And I think I was laid off the next day. Actually, they no longer needed me. And I'm, not going to question why, but I love my job. I love being a carpenter. I love the opportunity that I had to work with men and be alongside them and do the same things they did. And I was really good at what I did. I was good. I was a good drywall. I shot up ceiling wires to hang ceilings. Um, I worked at the AT&T building on a different job. It was downtown Chicago again in a big building. It was the AT&T building. I don't know if it's there right now, but that was 1987. I think I was 28 years old, I think. And it was a Saturday, and I just felt like, "Laura, you need to go see Uncle Nick. I felt it. I heard it, not verbally heard it, but heard it in my head. I needed to go see my Uncle Nick." My Uncle Nick lived in Arizona. So as it turns out, I did everything to get there as fast as I could, as fast as I could. I flew there by myself, rented a car, drove there. My uncle was there. My aunt, his wife was there. They lived alone in Scottsdale, Arizona. Um, and soon after, I will, if it comes up, I can talk about this later, but it can go into depth. But I remember him saying that weekend that he needed to go to the hospital. He didn't feel well. Now he had a arthritis. He was older. He had some toes removed from gangrene. He had diabetes. He had quite a few chronic conditions. But this had been going on for like 10 years. But he was my favorite uncle when he lived here in Chicago. And so I said, "Okay, Uncle Nick." So we went to the hospital. My aunt came with. He said, "Well, I'm going to ask your aunt if she can step out in the hall so that we can talk." And I said, "Okay." So I went up and I held his hand. I I still get emotional
It's okay,
when,
Laura.
when I
Take your
talk
time.
about this.
Take your time.
But he held my hand and he said, and he looked at me dead in the eyes and he says, "Laura, I need you to do a favor for me. I need you to take your aunt out to dinner tonight. She loves Chinese food. Can you take her out to dinner? And then make sure, that you get home okay and everything." And when I looked at him in the eyes, I knew that he was going to let go. He wanted to let go. I knew he wanted to let go. And I said, "Okay, Uncle Nick, I'll do that." And so Aunt Ruthie and I went out to eat for dinner. We came home. I went to bed and I had a flight back to Chicago the next morning. At 2:00 in the morning, the phone rang. And I don't remember if my aunt asked me to pick it up, but we were together. And they had said that my uncle it passed. It was 2 in the morning. 2 in the morning is pretty much when things happen. 2 in the morning is when I saw the little boy at the end of my bed too in Connecticut. Um, so my aunt said to me, she said, "So Laura, are you going to stay for the wake? We're going to have the wake soon." I think my aunt knew that this was going to happen. She also knew. And I said, "No, Aunt Ruthie, I came for what I had to come for. And now I think I need to go home." And I went home, and my father, whose sister was Aunt Ruthie, and she had married Uncle Nick, my father flew back for the wake. So there was family there. His Uncle Nick and Aunt Ruthie, their family was all in California. They had a son who had 11 children, and they were in California. They were coming for the holidays. They were coming for Thanksgiving, but he didn't wait until Thanksgiving. He didn't want to wait. I don't think he wanted them to be there when that happened. So that was pretty much my a future. There's other things that have happened in my life that reflect future occurrences. There's so many synchronicities that have happened in my life throughout my life that I've always known. Always.
It's okay, Laura. You've been. Such an emotional journey that I'm hearing that you've already been on already. Such an emotional journey, and especially for some of those things to happen at such a young age. You've had to deal with a lot.
When I was in my 30s, I wanted to become a mother, and I knew that if I waited much longer, I might not have a chance to become a mother. I've always wanted to be a mother. I did meet someone. I ended up getting pregnant. I ended up getting married to this person in hopes that we could have this wonderful little family that everyone has. It didn't turn out that way. My son was born with autism. He was diagnosed at 3 years old of being autistic. It was a very hard time in my life. My marriage was becoming unraveled. I believe my husband couldn't. It was too much. He had to go through the death of his father, and he had some trauma that he was dealing with. Then he had an autistic child. I had another child a year and a half later. Mark was a little delayed with vaccines because the vaccines are, that's a whole nother story for another time. I prayed to God that Mark would come out of his signs, and he did. He came, that was a miracle in itself. So I realized my marriage was becoming unraveled. I didn't have a job that I could sustain with being a carpenter. I had hurt my back. It was too physical. So I couldn't do that anymore. So I thought to myself, okay, well, what can I do and earn money in case I become divorced? And it was to go back into nursing. Well, I had to take the whole program over because it had been 20 years since I last took it. So at 40, I took the program over, became a registered nurse again. Decided after working in long-term health for a little bit, decided to go into psychiatric nursing. So I went into psychiatric nursing, which then I believe that each happening in your life will bring you to the point where you're supposed to be. And I do believe this. There's a reason for everything happening in your life. So I became a single mother. Uh, Out of safety reasons, I needed to do this. I was a sole guardian for my boys, 13 and 11, 12, you would say. But at that time, I was 13, 11 years old. I was supporting them on my own. And they grew up in a very nice neighborhood. I had two jobs. Um, I went from one job in psychiatric nursing, got 2 years of experience, did an amazing job, and said, okay, that's enough. It was very stressful. It was with adolescent girls in a DCFS unit from the inner city. They were it was very stressful. We were understaffed. So I got my resume and I went to another job and got that job. And this was also in the city, but it was a bigger hospital. It was a trauma one center. I worked there for 16 years in psychiatric nursing after the other job. And then I also worked at another job in more towards the suburbs, but a half an hour the other way from where I lived. And that was as an adolescent psychiatric nurse, intake nurse. Now, this was a less stressful job than the other one because the other one I worked with adults and detox, alcohol detox, heroin, whatever it would be, and suicidal patients, delusional patients, psychotic patients. And I actually helped them, but because of my illness back when I was 18, I was able to relate to them because my illness affected my brain where I developed encephalitis. Encephalitis is swelling of your whole brain. It brings behavior changes, but mine were able to come back to a stable position where I don't, um, well, I can't really say I don't have those. I do have some, where I can see things and hear things, and that's what makes me a medium right now. But there are a lot of people in psychiatric in the hospital that are inpatient that have this and just use it in a different way, and they're afraid of it and they don't have coping skills to work through it and to understand where it's coming from. So when I was sick and 18 years old, I remember some of the things that I did, some of the odd things I did, some of the behaviors, the impulsive behaviors that I would never do now. Because I have control over my impulses. But I can relate to it. Seeing the patients, I worked in the intensive treatment unit where a lot of the delusional, psychotic, aggressive patients would come, and they would call me ITU whisperer because a lot of these patients would listen to my voice and they tell me the next day or a few days later how much my voice calmed them down and they were able to get through their initial episode of without the medication, but then along with medication they were able to understand and come down and remember that I helped them. And that was my goal. I wanted to help as many people as I could without them going into a restraint episode. A restraint episode, you just don't want to be there. You don't. And if they are in that position, you want them to be able to come out as soon as they can, and to be safe and not try to harm themselves or hurt someone else. So it was very, my job was very, I was on fight or flight response at all times when I was in the hospital because it's very unpredictable. The patients were very unpredictable. But if I had a patient that said to me, well, I see something flying outside my window, and you talk to the other nurses and they'd be like, yeah, well, that's there. Well, I would go out the window and I'd look and I'd say, where? And they'd say, it's over there, it's over there. And I'd say, well, that's the light bouncing off from the street lamp or something like that. But I would look. I would look to confirm it because there are times when I was sick at 18 that I had things like that happen to me, and they were true. They were absolutely true. And my mom, uh, and others can verify, the nurses can verify that what I saw really happened. But if you had another nurse look at me, which they did, they just thought I was absolutely out of my mind, but I wasn't. They asked me one day what my mother's phone number was that they could call her when they could look out in the charts, but they wanted me to give it because maybe they wanted me to come back to reality because I had smashed all my plants on the ground at that time. I was so angry. So when I told them what my mother's phone number was at work, because it sounded so ludicrous to them, it was 484-1234. They just assumed that, oh, she's just out of her mind. Well, no, that was the number. That was the number. So if you could have a nurse look at someone else as maybe they are telling the truth. Maybe it's not their illness. And if you can have them adapt to someone saying, well, I'm hearing voices at night and they're scaring me. And maybe if you can have them say, well, what is it that they're saying that scares you so much? And maybe they can get some coping skills and understand where they're feeling this way and why they're feeling this way, instead of just throwing them medication or making them uncomfortable with how they're treating their illness or what they term as illness. Okay, getting back to that. So I worked there. It was 2019. I'm working two jobs. All of a sudden, this one job I wanted to work, it didn't work out. I was feeling depressed. So I went home and I looked in the newspaper, and this was when they had the Chicago Tribune delivered to your doorstep, So I'm looking in paper. I'm looking under horoscopes. I look under Pisces, and it says, "Get thee to a nunnery." I will never forget this. Get thee to a nunnery. And it was relating to something about being depressed, and I get thee to a nunnery. So what I did was I looked under job openings. It was instinctual. I needed to look under job openings in the paper. There was an opening for Our Lady of Victory down the street from where I lived is it's Catholic nun convent. Um, I didn't even really realize it was there. I didn't. I was brought up Catholic. I was baptized Catholic, but never went to church. We didn't practice going to church, but I believed in God. Uh, so I did. I went to the convent and I applied for that job and I got that job and I worked at the convent and I worked helping the sisters with their meals, passing out medication. I would usually be there with someone else and wouldn't be there by myself, which was very nice because being there by yourself is pretty hard, even if when you're working with sisters who the energy in the building, the energy that when you walked into the convent, Michelle, it was like nothing. I can't even explain it. It was beautiful. Yeah.
Wow. Like as in
And
a peace and bliss and
yes, yes. And they had a certain time when they would go to their auditorium room to pray. I believe it was 6 o'clock, and the church bells would ring, and we would prepare their uh, prepare whatever it was that we were getting ready. I believe it was their medicine for the nighttime because we were going to assist any of them that needed help with their bedtime routine and then pass medications. It was just beautiful. And I remember one sister, it was the first day I worked there. And and this is new territory for me. I went to public schools. I never went to Catholic school. So and remember, I didn't go to church either. So I'm looking at the sister. I'm giving her medication in the little cup, and I go to give it to her, and my hand is shaking because that's me. I shake, you know. So she looks at me and she says to me, "Oh, honey, it's okay. You don't have to get so anxious. I'm only a sister." Uh-huh. And I looked and I grinned, I smiled, and I said, "Oh, okay, thank you, sister. It's not making me nervous that way, but thank you. I appreciate that." So I was very humble when I was around. It's just that they think of things totally different than my other jobs. So my other jobs, I would be very unstressed, stressed out. They'd be suicidal. They'd be coming in after they tried to kill themselves. Um, it was really not a good scene. But I needed to support my kids. I needed to take care of them. I wanted to provide for them. I didn't get child support. I needed to do everything I could, and I did. Um, in 2019 was when I was on Facebook, and I'm scrolling down Facebook, and I see this ad for Lilydale, New York, and it looked really interesting, looked amazing. I'm like, I know there's much more to the spiritual side. I think I need to go there. So I planned my vacation. I went there by myself. I drove. Um, I stayed at a medium's home that they rented out. They rent out rooms. Um, So I stayed there. I went to a workshop while I was down there, and I it was on mediumship, becoming a medium. Now, I had never taken classes before, but the first class I took, the first instructor that was doing this, she was amazing. And the connection that I got was amazing. And she knew right away that I was like, there was a connection. She had moved me out with some other people that were having a really good connection also. From that point, I was pretty much hooked on doing that. Before that time, when I was still um, nursing, I would read even in my 20s when I was a carpenter, I would read James von Prague, who's medium, his books. I would read George Anderson books. Now, the children that died that would come back in spirit were just, I was amazed. I'm getting chills right now. I was amazed. I was always attracted to children and that aspect of it. There's a connection with me and younger people. I believe there's a reason why my son is autistic. There's a reason why he went through that. There's a reason why I work with children. I do believe that there's something, and this has happened during a time when I took classes at the Fellowship of the Spirit in Costa Rica, where I found my healing capabilities of putting hands on people and knowing what was wrong with them. Being a nurse, you have that capability, but this was more where you would get feedback as to what you said was correct, right? So I really enjoyed that a lot, going to do that, and I continued to go to Lilydale every summer, except I think I missed 2020 when COVID hit because I was working overtime. I worked so many hours so I could make it. They were paying nurses incredible money to work. But I stayed on the psychiatric floor. I wouldn't go on a medical unit because I had not been trained to work on a medical unit, except for nursing school. So I stayed on the psychiatric unit. I made it through the COVID. It was even hard, even working, even going in the hospital and experiencing what was going on. The lack of PPE during that time, it was just, well, anyway. So I continued to go to Lilydale and during the summers, and I do belong to some groups here for the healing also. So then I became certified in James von Prague, and that's where I met you also in the group. I went to San Diego and got my certification in level 2. Now I did meet James, and that was the first time that I had met him in person. So it was quite the honor. And then I've gone to see John Holland, who is amazing. He's wonderful. I've seen him with some other people in our group. So then I explore as much as I can. I've done remote viewing with Alan Seinfeld from Stargate, the original Stargate. So then in 2022, while I was nursing, I was diagnosed with cancer. And this because the overwhelming fatigue and the inability to work my jobs. I left and got treatment, went through 1 year of chemotherapy. I was still very weak, still unable to work. Um, I have been working through generational issues that I believe have gone undiagnosed. And I just was able to realize what it was back in August of 2025. This has cleared up so much in my life, and I feel blessed that I've found what it was that has been passed down that prevents me from doing certain things that I haven't been able to do. Besides the virus, it was in when I was 18. This is not the virus, but it explains so much more in my life and limitations that I've had. And it was not diagnosed until August of this last year. And the way that I found out about it was, again, things happen through electronics, things happen through computers, things happen through TV. It was amazing. I had not been looking up any of this information. I had not been researching any of this information. One day back in the spring of 2025 on TikTok. I was scrolling through Facebook. I saw it on TikTok. It was something that I could relate to and something that I knew that I had. And I pressed my doctor to get me a referral to go see a specialist that dealt with this, and that is what I have. And it's hereditary, it's generational. It's something that needs to be open to the rest of my family, that this is an issue. And that's what I'm saying. You just find out things like this they just happen to you at different times where you can, it all clicks. It all clicks. It's like, wow. It just clicks. I do spirit arts. Spirit art is, my mom was an artist. And I love drawing portraits. I've drawn portraits since I've been little. Since I've been in my 20s, I drew portraits. I just drew faces. I never knew why I liked faces so much, and the face structure and different faces and different hairstyles. And I never knew why. And that just all pulled together. And I started submitting my portraits that I was drawing. I go into a meditative state and I start drawing portraits. And on the side of the portraits, I'd put down different things like dates, different things that stood out, like a lightning bolt on one of the little boys I drew, their cap that they wore, the date, the name of their dog, their name of their mother. And I'd always list a message on the top that what the spirit wanted to convey. And I submit it to the online spirit art group portraits. And within a day or two, the longest was, I'd say, 3 days. There is a response, and it does connect. And the thing is that sometimes it connects with more than one person. So I believe that spirits get together and they'll make it known, different aspects that relate, but they connect with them. And that's what you're trying to do, is you're trying to connect with the person, however it comes through, that message is going to get to them. So it's very, I enjoy doing spirit art when I have time to do that.
Yeah. Wow. That's I just don't even know. I think I'm lost for words, Laura, with your whole life journey has been incredible. Incredible, but incredibly hard, challenging. To have a virus at such a young age, 18, when you're just starting out in adulthood, when you're just starting life, really, to go through that is enormous for anyone. And you can understand, I mean, so many young people would not know how to cope with that. You're so lucky to have so much support around you to help you
My,
get through that.
my mother used to say to me that she never knew anyone who was as strong as I was, and that if this had happened to anyone else, they would have never been able to get through it. And I wonder myself, in adulthood and having two boys and not having support, and going through that and going through the autism, and I often wonder how I got through that without having a mental breakdown. But I think it was just working in psychiatric nursing to help me cope with this.
Yeah. It's almost like you as you're telling your story, you can see the stepping stones as you've gone through that timeline where each piece has connected to the next one, to the next one, to the next one to prepare you for what was coming.
Right. Yeah.
It's
Sure.
it's kind of like saying hindsight's a wonderful thing, when you look back, but you really can see when you look back why this happened, why that happened, because further into the future, this was going to happen, and it was all preparation. It was all preparation. I mean, harsh lessons and harsh experiences, but all preparation to get you to this one point or these multiple points in time where you needed this experience, where you needed this,
Right.
you know, just this knowledge, this wealth of wisdom, everything, the challenges that built you bigger, better, and stronger to be able to cope. Just incredible. Incredible. Can I go back to a time when you were talking about at the very beginning, where you said your teacher would get you, light as a feather, and they lift someone with two
Hmm.
fingers? I found that fascinating in itself, where that was sort of something that people used to do at sleepovers, and it
Yes.
was like witchcraft, it was like magic
Yes.
witchcraft. I can't believe your teacher would get you guys to do that.
No. No, my teacher didn't. We
Oh, it wasn't
had
your
to
teacher.
do it. We had to do it before the teacher came in to teach.
Oh, sorry. I thought
Yes.
your teacher was getting you to do it. I'm like, what a
No.
cool teacher.
No. I think it
Oh,
was one of the kids in our class, in our fifth grade class. Now, I had just joined that fifth grade halfway into the year, but I think it was someone in the class that actually did that. But we had to make sure that we did it before that teacher came in.
I love that. I love that. The parents go, what did you do at school today? Witchcraft? Witchcraft?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. We did a little bit of paranormal phenomena.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's classic. I love that. That's just brilliant. And the fact that, all the kids were in on it, that's even better. And they, because they're young, they're so what do you call it? Like they're unfiltered, you know what I mean? And they're
Uh-huh.
firm believers, and they're so pure that that would have worked brilliantly. Brilliantly.
It was
Oh
an
man.
amazing. It was an amazing feeling for me to even remember back then, and to because there were things after my illness that I have put aside and forgotten in
Yeah.
school. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And can we skip to the house where you would hear the voices, people talking, the phone ringing. Now, was that an old house or was that like, did it have a history?
It was not that I knew of. It was a house from, it was built in the 1930s, I believe. So it wasn't that old, but the basement was unfinished, and there was a room in the basement that I just didn't feel right going into. Never. Never right going into it. It's off to the side besides our pool table. We had a pool table down there that my brothers would use. And there was always something with that room.
Bloody basements, Laura. Don't get me started.
Yeah.
Basements, concrete them in, problem solved. Oh, but it's interesting
Yeah.
how many people who I've had on here who talk about basements like that.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. Wow. So, realistically, from a very, very young age, you were receptive to spirit, to their communications, to intuition, feelings, whatever you want to call it, messages, hearing them, seeing them. I mean, and then to have your NDE, your near death experience, which I know we will discuss on another episode, but to then, would you say that heightened all of that?
I'd say that it made it more pronounced. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, wow.
Mhm.
So realistically, when again you look through your timeline, there was always that event or something that happened that's sort of pushing you more and more, developing it more and more, whatever that was, to keep you going in that direction, to keep you believing, to keep you open, receptive. And what's
But
really
I
great,
think But I think that I never really stopped um, seeking that because I think in an aspect of spiritualism or whatever is correlated with the mental illness that we deemed in our psychiatric hospitals, which led me to go into psychiatric nursing because I was always fascinated by the brain and the actions that we have with the brain.
yeah. And how fortunate those patients were to have you as their carer. And but even to listen to, like you're saying, and I understand what other people who have experienced it understand it. It's like that voice in your head that tells you to do something, and it's spontaneous. It has a feeling to it as well that like you're saying, to go and see your uncle. When
Mhm.
you get taught, that you have to do this. You don't always know
Mhm.
why. There's no real, logical explanation. You just know you have to go. And what timing, and the fact that you're open to listening and then being proactive to do is
Correct.
really important.
My youngest brother, who I am with right now, he made a joke at with the family. None of my family was really into this spiritual concept, but my younger brother would make a joke about if Laura comes to see you, don't let her. Don't let her come see you because that was a big joke. Someone's gonna die.
Yeah. Oh no. Oh, okay. That's not a good
Because
reputation.
no, no, but it's happened with me before in the long-term health uh,
Yeah.
my job, and it's happened with another uncle,
Yeah.
which is the story for another time.
Yeah. But how fortunate they are to have you there at that time. At such some may call a devastating time or traumatic time when someone passes, but when you're a medium, it's a very special time. It's a very it's a blessing to be there for that transition, for what we might call when they go home, when they
Yeah, I believe that their souls are calling out to someone who can understand.
yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. And again, like I say, you are open to receiving that call, understanding it, and acting on it, which is probably why, as your brother said, with you go, don't let Laura in if she comes to your house. But,
Yeah.
obviously that's something where, because you're so open and receptive, you're going to continue to get that for that reason, because you act on it. There's no, spirit's not going to bring something to someone who's just not going to listen. They're going to bring it to
Right.
someone who's going to go, okay, this person's going to listen. They're going to go, they're going to give the message. They're going to be there for that person, whatever the case may be. And I love that throughout your life, you've been open to listening and being proactive with fulfilling what you've been told, what you've felt, what you've known, which is a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't follow that, and they miss so much.
That's right. That's correct. There's so many synchronicities out there too that happen that all the time. Just, I write them down. I note them. I keep record of them. It's just amazing because I feel spirit is always trying to get your attention. They're always trying to get your attention in some way. And I'm trying to have my son understand this too. He listens to me. He will uh, uh, be contentious listening to me, and he'll maybe humor me, but I think some of it stays with him.
Yeah. It's planting those seeds, isn't it? And just allowing them to grow and flourish in their own time, because
Uh-huh.
they do it when they're ready. We've all done that. We've all
Correct.
seen that. We do it when we're ready. And
Correct.
yeah, so I just love that, the whole unfolding of it. And again, your stepping stones are almost so obvious to lead you to this point, to that point, to go here, to go there. I mean, if you didn't hurt your back, in carpentry, would you then have gone on to nursing? Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And
No, I don't believe I would have.
they're the little things, like you say, the synchronicities of, this had to happen, so you would go back to exploring this, and so on
But
and so forth.
I think mainly if I went back into nursing specifically for the income and knowing that it was the fastest job that I could get where I would be able to support my children. So if I didn't have a marriage that fell apart, then maybe I wouldn't have gone into nursing again. And
Yeah.
then maybe I wouldn't have been able to spend 16 years taking care of the psychiatric patients.
Yeah, exactly. And again, see all these little things that, some people at the time, they're terrible things to go through, a marriage breakup, a relationship breakdown, terrible things to go through. Then the realization that you're on your own with your children, and you are the sole purpose of, the sole provider of the family. These are huge crosses to bear, so to speak. And again, you've found ways around it, you've got through it, and here you are at this point. And I think this is really great for anyone that's listening or watching. You may feel like you're in a dark place right now, or feel like you're in a really challenging time of your life, but know that these times, these challenges are preparing you for something greater. And if that's not evident enough with Laura's story, I don't know what is.
Very good point.
Yeah. And I think that's, if that's one of the takeaways out of all of it, that is a huge takeaway. If you're listening or watching right now, you might think, oh, that's all right for Laura to say, that's all right for Michelle to say. No, you've heard what Laura went through. You've heard everything that happened to Laura, the virus that affected your entire life, years of your life. You've still carried on. Again, your mum, an enormous support there and I love the way you said, you were saying that she got you to go in to be a candy striper, work in a hospital so you could
Yeah.
understand. I love that. And I don't know
Yes.
how many people I've heard say when you go through a trauma, it is always good to give back, serve,
Yeah.
work for charity, donate your time to a
Yes.
worthy cause. And as much as you probably don't want to hear that, you don't want to do that, but when you start to understand it is a feeling and an accomplishment. There's so much to it that is so satisfying that you feel like there is a real purpose. You find purpose.
Yes. Yes. Correct.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
It
Yes.
is. It absolutely is.
And I do appreciate all the struggles I've gone through. No one in life is guaranteed to have a perfect life. No one. And I think the major thing is to get up and pick yourself up and do the best you can. And just know that there's so much more to life than what we see right here. And when you can see things in a different aspect than what you just see here, it opens up your mind to enough to get through those bad times. It opens it up because you know you can get through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also, and that's so beautifully said, Laura, too, so beautifully said, those words of wisdom. And I think it's a really great reminder as well. When you see someone in your present moment, like you might be looking at Laura, you might be looking at me, or a stranger in the street and assuming that, or they've always been where they are. We don't know where someone's been. We don't know what they've gone through to get to where they are today. The hardships, the trauma, anything. We don't know any of that that's got them to where they are today, to who they are today. And I think we always need to be mindful of that we've all gone through our own traumas and our own challenges in life, which has made us the person we are today. So embrace those challenges, embrace those traumas, because they have built you stronger, bigger, better, wiser. Oh, phenomenal.
And keep helping others. Keep helping others, no matter what your limitations are. Just keep helping others.
Yeah. And you're such an inspiration, Laura. Like you said, with all the challenges that you were faced with. You went through chemo, you've gone through all of it, just all of it. And you never gave up. You never gave up. You still haven't, and you're still going strong. There's still so much more to life. And I love that. I love that outlook. That is very inspirational, very inspirational. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Laura, do you have a page where people can find you, or you're not quite there yet?
Not quite there yet. But,
that's okay.
Maybe email.
Yeah. Well, we'll work on that in the background, and if anything changes, I will make sure that I update the description below where people can find you, and we can add any details you want to. We'll discuss that after the show. But thank you so much, Laura, for sharing your journey. It was remarkable, to say the least. You had me a few moments there. I know not everybody could see me on camera, but when you had a little moment, I had a little moment. I don't want to think about it now because I'm going to have a moment. So thank you so much for being on the show, and I look forward to having you back again very, very soon. To view the show notes, head over to themediumstable.com.au. If you want to watch these episodes, head over to our YouTube channel, The Medium's Table Podcast.